Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Welcome to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So today we're going to be reviewing a debate between Candace Owens and Rabbi Schmuley, hosted by Piers Morgan on the Piers Morgan Show. Right now, if anyone is familiar with this channel, you know that I really don't give a shit about Candace Owens. I don't like her as a person. I think she's a despicable person, right? And from the little that I've seen of Rabbi Schmuley himself, he's no better. He's not a better individual, right? So they're going to be having a debate about Israel, about anti-Semitism, and some other things. Now, I've seen this debate before, but I just want to react to it live and get other people to comment on it, and then we have a show about it. I'll open up the stream later on, then we can have a conversation about it. But I think that she did a fantastic job in this debate. I think she won it hands down. I think Rabbi Schmuley was just as unhinged as he normally is. Candace Owens was a bit more, she was a bit more reasonable in this debate. So let's just go through this debate, and I'll give my commentary as we cover different aspects of the debate. So I'll just share my screen as we begin to cover the debates. So here we go.
The war in Gaza is barreling towards a grim anniversary. This deadly year, sparked by a terrorist atrocity and met with an often merciless response, has changed the way that many people think about an historic dispute. Never in our lifetimes has there been such active debate about Israel's role in the modern world and whether the United States and its allies should back it. Protests and counter-protests have brought anti-Semitism to the fore, along with the charge that it sometimes insulates Israel from criticism. My next two guests have vivid opinions on these big issues and have had a very public feud. We're bringing them together for what we intend, I hope, to be a proper debate. The topics will be the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism in public life, American involvement in Israel, and Israeli involvement in the United States. And we'll even talk about Michael Jackson, who is relevant to this debate. Both guests will get roughly equal speaking time and a chance to question each other. Speaking of the other guest is not encouraged. Ad hominem attacks are strongly discouraged. But knowing these two as I do, I can make no promises. Returning to Uncensored.
So, rules that Piers Morgan has put in place, right? One is ad hominem attacks. That was the last thing he said. Ad hominem attacks are not encouraged. They're not supposed to, but just watch what happens when this conversation starts. You will be blown away.
Host of the Candace podcast, Candace Owens, and the author of The Israel Warrior and the Michael Jackson tapes, Rabbi Schmuley. So welcome to both of you. First of all, it's great you're doing this. You've had a public feud for a couple of years now. You've torn into each other.
With InDrive, you can take a ride at your price. Choose a top-rated driver and fill your life with feelings, passions, music. InDrive, choose a fair price for your ride.
No, come on.
In various forums, this is your chance to take each other on. And at the center of this, as I said in the intro there, is a very serious global story, which is the Israel-Hamas war and all the complexities that come away from that. I want to give you both the chance to make an opening statement. So Rabbi Schmuley, you won the toss. We didn't really actually toss, but we both agreed you can do this. You go first. Your opening remarks.
Thank you, Piers, for having me. And Candace, thank you for debating me. I have spent my life bringing together the Black and Jewish communities.
No, the first thing I have to say about debates like this is that it really isn't a debate as much as it's a show for bashing each other, just bashing themselves, right? And Piers Morgan is notorious for hosting such conversations, right? Such controversial conversations, where by the end of the day, there is nothing substantial or substantive or generative that comes out of the conversation. It's just for the heightened emotions, right? And you would see this right off the bat with Rabbi Schmuley's opening statement,
emphasizing that we share not only a history of shared persecution, but of...
Now, take into consideration that this debate is about Israel. It's about, the conflict in the Middle East. It's about
spiritual promise. Today we debate an American tragedy, a woman of unique eloquence who has abused that eloquence to become simultaneously the foremost anti-Black rhetorician in all of the United States and the foremost anti-Semite in America. The statements that Candace has made against her own community, that they cry wolf and constantly say that they're victims of racism. Her attacks on George Floyd, a man who was suffocated to death for a $20 counterfeit note saying that he was a horrible human being. A woman who went up in front of CPAC and said, I was never a slave in America, as if that's the only form of discrimination, is what has led her community to call her not Candace, but Clandis. The first ever.
So now, about Candace Owens, but the question is, what does this have to do with the topic of conversation? Really has nothing to do with the topic of conversation. So this is just purely ad hominem attacks. He's just attacking her personally. I mean, he needs to lay a case for his position, but he just goes straight into attacking that person, which seems, weird, because the last thing Piers Morgan said was that there shouldn't be any ad hominem attacks, but he's just going with that immediately.
Female Black woman who appears in her rhetoric against Blacks, calling LeBron James dumb and stupid, an icon to the Black community, as Clandis. Simultaneously, you have the Jewish community beginning to call her not Candace Owens, but Candace Ovens, because her Goebbels-style rhetoric against Jews, that Jews are nearly all pedophiles. The State of Israel has set up a Theodor Herzl, a pedophile, as a haven for pedophiles, that Judaism is a demonic, satanic cult that only protects pedophiles. And by the way, her absolute obsession with Jewish.
But is anyone surprised that Candace Owens is doing this? I'm not surprised. I mean, her whole brand is built on sort of this extreme hyperbole and rhetoric, and you might want to call it hate. That's a whole brand, right? There's nothing positive about what she says. She's looking for one controversy after the other, right? That's her brand. So I'm not surprised that she has, she's doing this to Jewish people. She did it to Black people. She's done it to different groups, different other groups. She even took on Brigitte Macron, that Emmanuel Macron's wife. She took her on. I mean, all the terrible things she said about her. So that is her brand. I'm not surprised.
Jewish sexuality and Jewish genitalia. The first lady of France, Brigitte Macron's genitalia, is disturbing. It's one of the reasons I think she hates Sigmund Freud so much, because she's a Freudian field dream in terms of his arguments that the greater the sexual suppression and repression, the greater we see violence. But when you say that the Jews killed JFK because he was about to ostracize Israel, when you invent all of these fabrications out of whole cloth, what is the result? The result is the demonization of Jews that leads to violence. Piers, just 1 week ago, 2 days after Candace falsely accused me, as she has for 2 years, of being a murderer, of threatening to kill her, something for which she will face legal action, because you cannot malign a rabbi and his daughter as murderers. 2 days later.
So is there like a special law that says you cannot malign a rabbi? I mean, if you're going to take legal action because she maligned you, if there is libel involved, yeah, but what does a rabbi have to do with that? Is there like a special law that puts rabbi in a category that you cannot malign them? I don't know.
I was swatted in my house, where 5 police cars had to break into my house because Mayor Michael Wilds of Englewood, New Jersey, received an email, arguably from one of Candace's followers, after she said essentially what Henry II says: who will rid me of this troublesome priest? Which leads directly to the murder of Thomas Becket, who today is a Catholic saint, of course. We were swatted, and the FBI is now investigating Candace's rhetoric. They're investigating.
Rabbi Schmuley, I'm interrupting because you've now
wait. Just
you've now
wait.
Been speaking for 3 minutes.
One final point.
So Candace will get exactly the same amount of time. It's up to you, but it's an opening statement, right? And what I would say, may I just say finally, if I may? Well, if it's quick,
The biggest issue I have with Candace, to be honest, is that she claims to be a Christian. Candace, didn't Jesus say you're supposed to love your enemies? Is the love you show me that you call me filth twice on the last show that you did with Pierce, a piece of filth? You're supposed to love your enemies. Is that turning the other cheek? And Pierce, you're an English gentleman. I've known you for many years.
What does that have to do with anything? I mean, does Rabbi Schmuley does he think that Candace Owens considers him the enemy, right? I mean, they're having disagreement, they're having ideological differences. Does that automatically make one your enemy? If you don't see eye to eye on an issue, does that make them enemies? And besides, Rabbi Schmuley is quoting "turn the other cheek." He turning the other cheek when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Why did he not tell the Israelis to turn the other cheek when Hamas attacked? So this is, this is just a double standard, and he's trying to, I don't know.
You allowed her to say that without even a piece of filth. When Jesus said that you're supposed to turn the other cheek, where have you ever turned the other cheek? When Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, the arrogance, the nonstop attack against Jews, the demonization. If you are a Christian, then I am the second.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? If you're checking your phone, stop that. Instead, try this technique from the mind science pioneer, Jose Silva. You see,
coming of Christ.
Okay. That's 4 minutes you've spoken to. Out of fairness, Candace, if you want to use 4 minutes to respond, you can. All I would note, Rabbi Schmuley, is you've spent 4 minutes personally attacking Candace Owens. I set this up as a debate about what is happening with the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism, and so on and so on. You've turned it all completely, immediately, into an ad hominem onslaught against Candace.
How could you possibly say that? You are speaking to a woman who says the Jews are a ring of demonic pedophiles, and you're saying that I have no right to defend my people. Pierce, you have to stop this once and for all. There was nothing ad hominem at all.
All right.
When Candace says that the black community
you've had your say.
is a bunch of crybabies,
okay.
Everything I said was policy. I could not disagree more.
Candace will now get the same amount of time, if you want it, Candace, to respond.
Thank you, Piers. And I don't think I really do need to respond to the ad hominem attacks. I think actually one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Schmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just...
Come on, Candace. You said you were not going to do the ad hominem, and then you went straight for it. Damn.
Just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said, and trying to screen that as a defense of Black people. The Black people will never accept Rabbi Schmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America, they won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing, and what we've always recognized, is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's Black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across.
And I think she's right so far. There is no religion, there is no group, there is no race that doesn't have its radical elements. And those radical elements are usually the loudest, and they give a bad name to the religion.
Across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Schmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norin Mezvinsky. and their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Schmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus, we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world."
Now, I really don't know about this rabbi that she's talking about, but I don't think it is unreasonable that something like this was said or something like this happened. In fact, a few days ago, I came across a podcast being hosted by, the name of the podcast was called Two Nice Jewish Boys. And the amount of insane things that was said in that podcast, right? They basically said that if there was a button that they could press that would wipe out all Palestinians from existence, that they were going to press it right now. Like, just give them the button if there's no conflict, and they feel that represents what most Israelis, they were saying that, oh, most Israelis are definitely going to press that button. Now, they might not say it, but in the closet, if you give an Israeli a button that would get rid of all Palestinians, right, and no one has to know, that they will press it. They said a lot of genocidal shit in that show. So yeah, this is not out of the realm of possibilities, what I'm trying to say, right? I know that different groups, different religions have their own supremacist ideas, right? So it is totally not out of place.
And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered.
Now, it would be great if Rabbi Schmuley can actually come out and say, well, Jews are not superior to any other people. I would love for him to say that. So we would see whether he would say that.
Completely different species. So that is a belief, and you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated, and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Schmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel. What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
So, Candace Owens, I don't like her, but at least she's consistent. She's consistent with her betrayal. She's consistent with her hatred. She's consistent with her nasty behavior. So you can't say that, she's singling out Jews for this sort of rhetoric or whatever she's doing with the Jews right now. You can't say that because she's done it to other groups. So she is at least consistent in that regard, right? So.
Okay, those are the two opening statements. Rabbi Schmuley, let me ask you this.
This AI tool will take create a complete book, complete with design, images.
Where are we now with this war? Because it seems that the people inside Israel are now beginning to come after Prime Minister Netanyahu, angry that his mission to save the hostages is simply not working. We saw 6 more executed at the weekend. Obviously, that's on Hamas. But the relatives of other hostages are saying, for God's sake, bring back the hostages before it's too late. And there's no sign of any deal being done to do that. And there's a lot of pressure on.
I don't think Netanyahu has any interest whatsoever in bringing back the hostages. I don't think so. He wants to perpetuate himself in office, just like Putin wants to remain forever as the president of Russia. Right? These men don't care about anything other than their political career. And we know very well that Netanyahu was facing serious legal, political issues before October 7th. Right? So if the war ends, then focus shifts to him. He doesn't want it to end. I mean, because how can you have hostages and then you're bombing the place that the hostages are supposed to be, right? Even if at all, make a deal, get your hostages back, and then do whatever the hell you want to do with Hamas. But the fact that there is no break, there is no deal, there is no conversation around bringing back hostages, innocent people, which a lot of it is on Hamas, right? right? Kidnapping innocent civilians, that's totally on Hamas. But as the leader of a country, as the responsible leader of a country, you should do everything in your power to bring back the hostages. What's to say all the bombing that has been done in Gaza has not killed some of the hostages themselves? It is entirely within the realm of possibility that that has happened. So Netanyahu has absolutely he has no desire to see this conflict end because it perpetuates him in office.
On Netanyahu, is his mission statement failing?
Yes, I will.
Remember, his goal was he was going to destroy Hamas. He wants to destroy Hamas. He wants to wipe out Hamas. This is what more than a year now, and Hamas they're still there, despite the number of civilians that have been killed in Gaza.
Answer that in just a moment, but Piers, your guest just called me mentally unhinged. She called me filth twice on your show.
I mean, this guy is really petty. He's still going back to that. Okay.
You did not just say to her, Candace, can you stop the ad hominem attacks? Did I ever say anything? I stuck to policy. Can you at least just be fair and say that's unnecessary, Candace? Or
Nah, you didn't stick to policy. You said a lot of shit about her. Yeah, she mentioned two things about you, and then she went on to say things that actually pertain to the conversation. Yeah, so
is this two against
Well,
one?
no. You spent 4 minutes lacerating her.
Calling me mentally unhinged, is that
You're sitting there to defend that charge.
Is that ad hominem?
You spent 4 minutes attacking her personally. She's perfectly entitled
Piers,
to
with all
return
due
the
respect,
favor.
with all due respect, when one of your guests calls someone else filth, I think that you, as an English gentleman, should step in. But let me answer your question. No less, the only thing of Christ that Candace Owens has actually fulfilled.
why is Rabbi Schmuley bringing up Christ? Is he a Christian now? Does he believe in Christ? If there's anything I know about the Jewish faith as it regards to Jesus Christ, they don't believe in him. They don't respect him. So why is he bringing it up? Why is he trying to blackmail Candace Owens with her religion?
Comes from Matthew chapter 10, verse 35, where Jesus says, I've come to separate and create conflict between a woman and her mother-in-law and father-in-law. My answer to your question about Gaza is that Lord Michael...
Now, he totally doesn't understand what Christ meant by that passage, but he's quoting it, right? He's quoting it.
Farmer, a courageous British peer who happens to be Candace Owens' father-in-law, issued one of the most robust and beautiful defenses of Israel that any of us have read since October 7th. He said that, of course, there's a lot of terrible Palestinian casualties. God loves every Palestinian child as much as he loves a Jewish child. He said that Israel has no choice but to fight this war because Hamas hides in residential areas and under nurseries. He said that Israel, the savagery of October 7th, demands a response. He said that Israel is doing exactly the right thing. And he said that he's doing all this in response to a, quote, high-profile member of his family and his daughter-in-law, Candace Owens, because he didn't want to say her name. And he didn't even say, I love my daughter-in-law, but because the British remember Hitler, they remember the Battle of Britain, they remember the V-1 and V-2 rockets. Candace Owens has actually now said that the Nazis were the good guys and it was the allies, the British, people like yourself, Piers, who engaged in the ethnic cleansing of 12 million people based on some documentary she watched called The Savage Peace on the BBC.
So here, I think Rabbi Schmuley has a point, right? Because Candace Owens, immediately after she left the Daily Wire, she was peddling this. She was making this case as if the Germans were the true victims of World War II. She talked about the bombing of Dresden, right? And so many other things. The ethnic, quote unquote, ethnic cleansing of Germans from certain territories that Hitler had occupied in World War II, right? Now, why tragedies did happen, tragedies did happen to the German people after they lost the war, right? There was a lot of rape when the Russians came in and some other forces in Germany. There were a lot of terrible things, but the Germans were not the victims. They were not the true victims of World War II, as Candace Owens would want us to believe. She was trying to paint Christians and paint Germans as the true victims, and that is insane.
which wasn't even about the Allies. She always distorts. It was about the Czechoslovakia, a country that no longer even exists. And as far as what she said about Michael Jackson, putting me on enemies list, that is a total fabrication. It was invented by someone named Dieter Wietzner, who sued Michael Jackson for $64 million, tried to shake him down.
So what I've not heard from Rabbi Schmuley is him debunking the claim that Jews believe that they are superior to other people. He hasn't said anything about that. It'd be interesting if he doesn't say anything about that.
And Michael had to pay him $4 million. I worked to save Michael's life. Candace Owens never met Michael Jackson. I was his rabbi for 2 years. I love him. I missed him. I tried to get him off of drugs. She said that I killed him. And talk about the contempt.
Is this guy not the lawyer representing, or the lawyer that represented, what's his name? Okay, I think that's another Jewish lawyer. That's not
people struggling with addiction, that she would say the Jews killed Michael Jackson. And with all respect, Piers, you have not said that one of those things, that I'm a murderer, a man who doesn't have a speeding ticket, who doesn't have a parking ticket, is a murderer, and the police have to come and the FBI to protect me.
Now, this guy is clearly unhinged. Yeah, he is. He's leaving the issues and he's just talking around things that do not pertain to the conversation.
Are you going to say...
Here's what I'm going to say to you, Rabbi Schmuley. Once again, you've just singularly failed to answer my question. So if you're just going to continue, every time I ask you a question about the war, which is the point of the debate, to just launch into Candace or her family or whatever, that's your decision. But in the interest of fairness, every time you speak for 3-4 minutes, well, hang on. I'm now going to let Candace respond if you want to, Candace. Look, it is obviously a matter of public record that your father-in-law, Lord Farmer, did post on X what he posted. He concluded by saying, I point out I'm the Christian Deputy Chair of the Council for Christians and Jews. This was founded in 1942 as a bulwark against anti-Semitism. I mean, do you want to say anything about what your father-in-law...
Your coffee, please.
No way! I'm letting that newbie join.
Or posted, or anything else that Rabbi Schmuley just said?
Yeah, I'm grateful that he brought that up, and because it's very disturbing to me to see him try to pretend that my father-in-law distanced from me or said something in favor of anything that Rabbi Schmuley is saying. He would never do that. It is very important to understand that, you know, he does support Israel, and he has reaffirmed his support for Israel. And you can imagine that within any family, you have disagreements about things, but fundamentally, it's all love, you know, and it's good for us to have these conversations. Prior to him posting the statement, I had just gotten back from vacation with him, literally 48 hours earlier. There was something incredibly demonic about a person trying to use the Bible at the beginning of a statement, as he did, trying to quote scripture and immediately following it up by trying to pull a family apart. I mean, that is utterly unholy. And I think the question of holiness and what is holy is relevant to this discussion. I think this is a conversation that a lot of people are having as well. Look, prior to October 7th, I don't think many people were engaged with what is happening in Israel. You know, we kind of all said the same thing. Israel is our friend and ally. I count myself among those people. Post October 7th, the war.
And I think she's right. I mean, I myself had that attitude, right? Israel is the good guys, Palestinians are the bad guys, they're terrorists, and so many yada, yada, yada. That was the default narrative. That was what I believed. That was what most people I knew believed. That was what most of the world believed, right?
World, and especially I would say Zionists in media, were demanding that we all pay attention. And when we began to pay attention, we didn't like what we saw. You cannot tell me to ever feel comfortable with 18,000 children being ruthlessly murdered. You can't get me to feel comfortable as a Christian with the amount of more explosives dropped, tons of explosives dropped on Gaza than were dropped in Hiroshima. This doesn't make sense to me. Gaza is 30 miles long, 7 miles wide. It's incredibly dense population. And this is, by the way, according to Haaretz, that 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered. I believe they're getting those numbers.
And Haaretz is an Israeli newspaper, right? So you can't claim that it's Hamas that's giving those figures. And she's right. You know, the devastation that's happening in Gaza right now, it's a shame on the world. It's a stain on the conscience of the world.
From the Gaza Health Ministry. And here's what I would like to say to you, Rabbi, since you're quoting scripture, okay? The one that's relevant to me is, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. And if you'd like to dive into a little more scripture, I think what's relevant is Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Schmuley. The fact that you would try to say, I am Jewish and this is what I believe, and do and say the things that you are doing. People can see and hear evil, and what you are doing right now is an act of evil. The lies that you are telling, not just on me, but also on my family members, are a good example for the world to see what we are referring to when we call something radical Zionism.
Okay, Rabbi Schmuley.
Okay, and okay, thank you. And of course, Piers, there was nothing ad hominem.
Now, you've got to give it to Candace, right? She's eloquent, or she was eloquent here. So yeah,
had hominem being demonic. This is a 2-against-1 debate. I expected that.
It's not a 2-against-1 debate.
And I will, excuse me, no, it's a 2-against-1 debate.
What's it with these people when they're losing debates, they start claiming it's a 2-on-1 debate? I mean, Piers hasn't, he hasn't interjected so much. He's let them have their turn. He's serving the role of the moderator and he's doing his job pretty well. The same thing with Trump. When Kamala Harris beat his ass in that debate, him and his followers were claiming that, it was a 3-in-1 debate, right? And they ganged up on him, right? And these are the kind of people that they will try to manipulate the host into, siding with them. His appeal to Piers Morgan being British, his appeal to him being a journalist, he's made appeals, so many emotional appeals. I mean, come on, you're debating a woman and you're just making emotional appeals like a baby.
Made no attempt to answer my question.
No. Piers,
Candace,
let me speak.
Has been trying to answer my question.
Candace just said,
you're not.
Candace just said.
Now, the only difference between Candace and Rabbi Schmuley in this conversation is that Candace has limited her attack on Rabbi Schmuley. She's limited it to a very large extent, right? Yeah, she's called him some nasty things, right? But the bulk of what she says relates to the conversation. It's flipped with Rabbi Schmuley. He just says crazy things about Candace Owens and then he puts in 1 or 2 things that relates to the conversation. So I can see why Piers Morgan is not intervening on his behalf.
Candace, filth, demonic. There's nothing ad hominem about that. You are correct. You're right, Piers. Candace Owens just said that Israel dropped more bombs on Gaza than on Hiroshima. Hiroshima was an atomic bomb, Candace. Why don't you just read Wikipedia? Israel has nuclear weapons. They've never used them, so I have no idea what you're
Yeah, when she talks about dropping more bombs in Gaza than Hiroshima, she wasn't talking about the type of bombs. She was talking about the, when you put the combined strength of the bombs, how many kilotons was the bomb dropped in Hiroshima? Then compared to the number of the kilotons of the bombs that have been dropped in Gaza so far, I think more drums comparatively have been dropped in Gaza than were dropped in Hiroshima. That's the point she was getting at, not that, Israel used nuclear weapons in Gaza.
Talking about. Now let's look at Israel's justified defense. Israel admits, and even Hamas admits.
This line that Israel is defending itself is such a weird line. I believe every country has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to defend itself too. But you cannot be carrying out an offensive operation and you're calling it defense. This is no longer defense. This is an offensive operation. And to frame it like, Israel has a right to defend itself. No, it's not defense at this point in time. It's an offense. An offense against the civilian population of Gaza, right? With the guise of going after Hamas. With the number of Palestinian civilians that have been killed so far, you will see that this is clearly more than trying to go after Hamas. This is trying to inflict pain. This is trying to inflict the maximum amount of distress on the people. People's lives have been uprooted. They've been moved from place to place. They are told to go to a safe place, and that safe place is bombed, right? Children are not going to school. In fact, polio, which has almost been eradicated from the world, has now resurfaced in Gaza. That's what is happening.
2-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio of civilian casualties, which is a tragedy. It shouldn't even be 1. But remember, Hamas fires their rockets from nurseries. The United States and Afghanistan had a 4-to-1 ratio of civilians murdered for every one combatant. In the Korean War, it was 5-to-1. In Iraq, it was at least 2-to-1. Israel has the lowest per capita ratio of combatants to civilians.
That's bullshit. That's really, really, really bullshit. Because even Israeli officials have been asked. There was a time that one of the Israeli officers came to Piers Morgan show, and then they asked him, "How many Hamas fighters have you killed?" And he couldn't answer it. He couldn't give a figure as to how many Hamas fighters he's killed or Israel has killed. But they'll tell you, "Oh, they've killed so much." So where is he getting these bullshit statistics from? The country that claims to be the most moral, they have the most moral army in the world. I mean, what the hell with that? There's no army that is moral. Soldiers are out there to kill people. So to attach, that kind of language to the killing of people, it's so disgusting. The most moral army in the world. The most moral army in the world that shot at the World Food Kitchen staff that were unarmed. The most moral army in the world that shot at nuns in a church. The most moral army in the world that shot at its own citizens when those that escaped from captivity, bare-chested, with no clothes, running out, asking for help, they were shot by a sniper. The most moral army in the world who just killed an American journalist in Gaza. Yeah, very moral.
Candace should acknowledge that. That is what we call a fact.
But you should
As far
also,
as
okay,
Candace
hang on. You should also acknowledge then that there is a unique demographic in Gaza where of the 2 million people who live there, half of them are under 18. So that's a very different demographic to any of the other scenarios you're talking about. That is what's caused so much international opprobrium against Israel, is the fact that so many children, pro rata in the civilian death count, have been killed. It's that people are so exercised about, and rightly, because what's happened here is obvious. Hamas, yes, they've embedded themselves in civilian territory. Yes, they've built all these tunnels. None of these things are to be disputed. But the problem with going after Hamas in the way that Israel has been doing is that the collateral damage, as they would put it, to so many thousands of children has now tested the patience of the world to a degree that vast quantities of the world are against it and want this to stop. That's the reality.
I think that's a very fair question. And I don't like whataboutism, but Candace Owens never spoke out once.
I like the fact that Candace is not interrupting. She's not as aggressive as she usually is. She's calm, she's composed, she's collected. She waits for her turn. She makes a point and she keeps quiet. The Candace that normally comes on shows like this is always on attack mode. But the fact that she's calm and she's just taking her time, that's impressive.
Against Bashar al-Assad, who killed 600,000 Arabs, and he actually gassed to death children. He targeted them with mustard and poison.
Candace would have been a baby when that was happening. How do you expect her to comment on something like that?
Gas. You remember that President Obama said that's a red line, and then he gave it to Putin to get rid of those weapons of mass
which was
destruction.
completely
God bless
wrong.
President Trump, who actually wait, just a second. President Trump, God bless him, actually fired 59 cruise missiles when Assad did that. It's funny because people say that President Trump is anti-Muslim. He's the only one who protects.
I was thinking it's the other Iraqi guy. Okay, yeah.
Muslim life.
She wasn't a baby.
Pierce, Hamas has ruled since 2006. They won an election jointly with the PA. They took the Palestinian Authority representatives and threw them off of rooftops. They then subjected the Palestinians, 1.5 million Palestinians of Gaza, to the most ruthless persecution that we've ever seen. They stole all their money. Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Tehran, is worth $4 billion. Now he's fighting with Erdogan, his kids, over who's going to inherit that. Khalid Mashal is worth $3 billion. You and I both know that the Palestinians of Gaza got triple the amount per capita, prorated for our times, of the Marshall Plan. All of that money was stolen to build tunnels. There isn't one bomb shelter. The reason why people are dying in Gaza is because that money was used to buy penthouses in Doha, Qatar. There isn't one bomb shelter that from Hamas. Hamas shoots and murders anyone who challenges their authority. They were elected in 2006 to a 4-year term. It's now 20 years later. Hamas specifically, and that's why they're being condemned.
So I really don't get. Hamas is oppressing the people of Gaza, yes. So Israel should finish them off. So Hamas has started oppressing them. Israel should just finish them off because it's more humane. What's the point, right? What is the point of this?
By the Palestinians right now. They want Palestinian children to die because the more they die, the more you will condemn me and Israel. But let's remember, Piers.
So they want that to happen. You know they want that to happen, and you are doing what they want. How does that sound? They want you to kill more Palestinian children so that the world gets outraged at Israel, and Israel is falling into that trap deliberately when Israel knows that's what Hamas wants them to do. That's crazy.
Your parents are part of the greatest generation. Winston Churchill was told by
another emotional blackmail, trying to appeal to he's trying to appeal to Pierce's emotions.
The Americans, don't bomb German cities, Hamburg, Dresden, etc. at night. You can't see what you're bombing. Do what we Americans have, which is precision daytime bombing. And Churchill said, no, my pilots are more important. We need the RAF.
And Churchill is Churchill. I don't even know what words to use for Churchill. Churchill was a bad man. I mean, a really, 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 really bad man. If you look at the things that he did, especially with the Bengal famine, millions of Indians died because of Churchill. So you can't be using him as an example of anything. He was a terrible person. He just happened to be on the good side of the war, if you want to put it that way, because compared to the Nazis, and you can say he's better comparatively. But I don't think there was any leader during World War II, Stalin, Hitler, Churchill. I don't think those were good men. Those were all very, very bad men who did very, very bad things.
And he flattened German cities. And he is considered today the greatest British statesman.
And by the way,
and it's crazy that he did that. Why would he bomb German cities? Why would he bomb civilians, right? As much as Nazi Germany was was this genocidal country that was just taking over the whole of Europe. Civilians should always, targeting of civilians during war should be a war crime. And I believe that part of the reason why, some of these war conventions were put in place was to checkmate what happened during World War II. So you can't use that as an example of how to conduct war today, how to do the business of war today.
By the way, the flattening of cities like Dresden was widely condemned at the time, including by many people in Britain, and led to the establishment of the Geneva Convention.
Dresden was the last month of the war, but before that, Hamburg and everything else was not condemned.
It led to the establishment of the Geneva Convention after World War II, specifically to stop that kind of thing happening again. So I'm glad you raised that example. Candace, you've got over 3 minutes.
Do you condemn Winston Churchill as a war criminal for Dresden?
No, absolutely not.
Well, I do condemn him.
No.
Why not? You just said that it was wrong.
I was
Winston Churchill as a war criminal for Dresden?
Well,
please, you said not, but why?
If you're both going to ask me the same question, let me be clear. Winston Churchill was not a war criminal, right? But some of the ways that
why not? He bombed Dresden and killed 25,000 people.
Yeah, he also saved the world from Adolf Hitler and the Nazis.
Oh, he saved the world. So Israel's saving the Middle East from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Iran.
But it's not, though.
Hezbollah.
Israel's not.
Well, if we're being consistent here, I've got to give this point to Rabbi Schmuley, right? Because you can't, Israel can make the claim that they're doing these terrible things they're doing is in a bid to save their people. There's a bid to save the Middle East, right? Just as Churchill did terrible things to save, quote unquote, the world, which I don't think, So I am very, very comfortable to say that Churchill was a war criminal with the things he did, right? What he did in India, bombing of German civilian cities or civilian centers, yeah, that's a war crime.
doing that.
Thank you for answering my question.
Well,
case closed.
All right, let me go to Candace.
If I could just interject here, just to respond to that, I was going to say exactly what you said, Piers. Like, Dresden was considered a Holocaust. It was, in fact, a war crime. And there should be debates about what happened in Dresden. It was absolutely horrific that a bunch of Christians were skipping off, on the eve of Ash Wednesday.
So this point that Candace keeps making, bringing in Christians, this wasn't a war on Christians, right? This was a war against Germany, and civilians, German civilians who happened to be Christians, were caught in the crossfire. So this wasn't targeting them because they were Christians, but she's trying to make it into sort of a religious persecution thing, to make Christians into the victims of World War II. That's totally bonkers. That's totally insane.
Then they were quite literally reduced to ashes. It is wrong. And the fact that you are having to reference a war crime to justify what's happening in Gaza is not a point for you. It's completely awful. When people say, oh, well, look at what we did. Look at all these other horrific things we did. Why do you care about this horrible thing that's happening? I don't even understand that logic. It's completely ridiculous. Look,
yeah, she has a point in that point.
There is no person in good conscience who should be comfortable with the amount of death that's happening in Gaza. And yes, if you are going to correlate it to Dresden, that would be a fair comparison, except much more has been dropped on Gaza than was dropped in Dresden. So is it fair to call what's happening in Gaza a Holocaust? Is that what we're looking after when you have this nonstop onslaught? And it's completely ridiculous to say, oh, well, this is happening because of Hamas. Let's be very clear. It is happening because the Israeli government will not stop bombing them. Okay. So you had a very sympathetic audience all around the world, myself included, when October 7th happened. There's not a single person that should or could justify the terrorist acts that was enacted by Hamas. But the collective punishment.
Yeah. And I think she's right. I mean, she's got a point. When October 7th happened, when I saw when these images were coming out, I was very distressed about what I was seeing, especially with that female soldier who was bleeding from her trousers and the whole thing that was happening. I was distressed. Like it took an emotional toll on me. And with all the other things that came out after that, the other information that came out after, so it was a terrible thing. There is no justifying what Hamas did. No justification for whatsoever what Hamas did, right? It was a terrible thing, right? So I believe that most of the world understands that. Most of the world understood that. But the way Israel is going about its quote-unquote revenge, two wrongs do not make a right. And what Israel is doing is not right.
Punishment that is being assigned to the Gazans, the Palestinians living in Gaza, is also unacceptable. And the entire world should condemn it, and it should be made to stop. And I do believe.
And yeah, we can say that, Israel doesn't have a choice. It's about Hamas. But the actions of the Israeli government and the Israeli military, the rhetoric that have come from them, right, invoking Amalek. I mean, I'm a Christian. We know that reference to Amalek when God commanded King Saul to go to kill the Amalekites, to kill everything, both the cattle, the sheep, every living thing. That was the commandment. And Saul got into trouble because he did not kill some of the goats or some of the animals to reserve them to say, oh, I'm going to sacrifice them to God. And then Samuel the prophet said that it is better to obey than to sacrifice. That God had said, kill everything. So when the Israeli government, when Netanyahu is invoking that sort of rhetoric that say, kill everything, kill your enemies, destroy everything, that's a genocidal statement.
Believe that a radical fringe has taken hold of Israel. And further evidence of that, by the way, is that we are not even allowed to critique Israel without having people like Rabbi Schmuley, which I never said he threatened to murder me, but he has threatened me for 2 years, essentially trying to bully people into their belief that they have a right.
You never said that I threatened to murder you? We're going to post.
No, I never said that you threatened to murder me. Don't cut me off. I did not cut you off.
Okay. I will not cut you off. Go ahead, please.
I did not cut you off. Okay. The point is that now what's happening, you have Zionist organizations that are threatening and bullying people because people are taking a stance against this act against humanity. What they're doing is inhumane in Palestine. And so what they're doing is they're saying this person should get fired. This person should lose their job. The Zionist Federation of Australia just asked for me to have my visa banned simply because I don't support what Israel is doing. And if that is what I have to pay, if ultimately what happens, I get my visa banned because Zionism has a lot of money in media, then so be it. It's less of a price than the children in Gaza are paying right now. And as a Christian, I will never support what Bibi Netanyahu is doing.
Right, and what's interesting to me, Rabbi Schmuley,
may I respond?
hang on.
May I respond?
Yes, but let me just say again the question I put to you earlier. It's not just people outside Israel who are now heavily criticizing Netanyahu and his government. It is people inside Israel in massive numbers. And so my question for you is, why? Why are so many people inside Israel taking to the streets to demand that Netanyahu stop this war?
Because they understand that Netanyahu is not interested in stopping the war. He's not interested in bringing back the hostages. He's not interested in anything other than his political career. I mean, this guy is just trying to save himself because he knows that if this conflict ends, he's going to go to jail. There are corruption charges against him. So many, even the way he's prosecuted this war, he's definitely going to go to jail. So he's trying to prolong that as long as possible. And this is the thing that's, dictatorial leaders do. It's what Putin is doing. Putin is trying to save himself, trying to perpetuate himself in power forever. That's what he's doing.
No, they never said he should stop the war. They said there should be a ceasefire to release the hostages because Israel is a...
So why is there no ceasefire to release the hostages? Why is there no deal to bring back the hostages? Imagine being an Israeli and having one of your family members in a Hamas captivity and knowing that Israel is bombing Gaza every day. Knowing that one of those bombs could very well drop on a building where your family member is being held captive. And the person who is doing that is the Israeli government. Why is there no deal at this point to bring back the hostages? Why is Netanyahu not even thinking about that? He doesn't care about the hostages. He only cares about himself.
Don't interrupt me, please, Candace, because Israel is a culture of life. And that's why Israel got into this mess for October 7th. They traded 1,000 murderers, including Yahya Sinwar, who Israel saved at Soroka Hospital in Beersheba when he had a brain tumor. The Hamas Hitler, who's the architect of October 7th, Israel saved his life. It's a culture of life, even for Palestinian murderers. They traded 1,000 for Gilad Shalit. You remember that. And now a whole group is saying, even if it leads to another October 7th, I need my children home. I understand that. Piers, I have 2 sons fighting in this war. I understand the dangers that are being faced. No one's saying to stop the war, not to destroy Hamas. They're saying call a ceasefire to release the hostages because of their execution. But I must respond. First of all, Candace just said that Israel dropped more bombs on Gaza than on Dresden. What's your source for that? Do you know that in Dresden, there were 1,000 Lancaster bombers sent over 2 nights by Churchill, and then 800 American, that's 1,800 bombs. What's your source that Israel dropped more than on Dresden?
So it's just interesting because you realize that you use Dresden as an example.
No. Answer the question. You just made Piers. This is the
I said more tons
you
of
said
explosives.
Israel. You just made it.
Now, a funny thing is going to happen because I've watched this debate before. A funny thing is going to happen when Candace Owens finally gives her source for this information. Rabbi Schmuley brushes it off. He tries to change the conversation. Right now, he's insisting on a source. He wants to get his source for this information. Watch what he does when he gets the source.
A blood libel against the Jewish state. Dresden was 1,000 Lancaster bombers over 2 nights. I am asking you, what is your source? The answer. Okay, don't interrupt me, please. The answer is Piers. It's my turn. Piers.
Rabbi Schmuley.
Yeah, she has a point. You can't keep raising, you're an anti-Semite. You're invoking blood libel against the Jews when you say something about Israel. It's getting boring. People are looking at that and nobody's accepting it anymore because Israel is a country that can be criticized just like any other country. So when you try to shield it with this cloak of anti-Semitism or blood libel, it just shows that's a very nasty behavior.
Rabbi Schmuley, you can't ask someone a question and then refuse to let them answer.
So I asked for a source. I didn't ask for a question.
We've heard the question.
It is absolutely absurd. I'm going to respond to what you are saying. this tactic of when anybody brings up anything that Israel is doing is wrong, you get to just scream
you see,
blood
there is no
libel
source.
and
So, Piers, let me continue.
anti-Semitism.
Don't interrupt
And,
her.
oh my
I'm
gosh, it's a
sorry.
blood libel. It is not
Don't
a blood
interrupt
libel
her
to
when she
talk
won't
about
give
the
a
amount
source.
of death and the tons of explosives that have been dropped on the civilians in Palestine, okay? That is not a blood libel against
You
Jewish
said
people.
that Israel
This is such
dropped
a
more
nasty
on
and
Gaza than
perverted
Dresden.
tactic,
What is your
which
source?
essentially says, I don't have to debate anymore because I get to just call everybody a person who's accusing me of blood libels. Okay, truly, what is happening right now is that the blood of Palestinians is being shed. Okay, that is not a libel against the Jews. That is a fact and a reality against Bibi Netanyahu and this government, which has gone extreme in their response to October 7th.
And it's very weird how defenders of Israel, they always equate Jews with Israel, with Zionism, as if they are all the same things, right? So when you criticize Israel, they say, oh, you're criticizing Jews. When you say something about Israel or say something about the Zionist ideology, or they say it's about Jews. But not all Jews are Israelis. Not all Jews are Zionists. Not all Jews support the state of Israel. Not all Jews support Netanyahu or whatever he's doing right now. But then they make this conflation, and then when, I don't know.
So stop this tactic.
Understood. Piers, can I now have my turn again? All I asked was the source. Clearly, she has none. It was invented out of whole cloth. That's
Imagine creating an engaging video with one click. People absorb 10 times the amount of information.
what a blood libel is. A blood libel is when Candace Owens says that the actual medieval blood libel, that Jews killed Christians and drank their blood.
I will
she
pull up the
actually
source for you.
believes that. She's please don't interrupt me.
I will
She
find
actually
you the
says
source.
that there were Christian bodies found all over Europe. When she said that I am not trying to kill her, we will post right after this, where she said it at least on 8 occasions. That's why she's being investigated by the FBI. Because you can lie about me, you can call me filth, and Piers won't, and you can call me psychotic. I've never said that about you. But what you can't do is incite violence against my family. You have repeatedly said I'm trying to kill you. You said the Jews killed JFK. You said if the Jews killed JFK,
you said all this
and
earlier.
we couldn't protect the president. Okay, wait one second.
Can we get
Yeah,
back
he
to the
doesn't
debate?
have anything to say, so he just keeps repeating himself over and over and over and over again. This was a conversation about Israel. This is a conversation about what Israel is doing in Gaza, and then he's turned it into some weird Candace Owens is an anti-Semite sort of thing, which she very might well be, but
A moment. No, wait. Let's just go back for a moment. No, Piers, I have to respond to things.
Would you like a
When
source?
Candace says that it is demonic.
You wanted the source from Candace.
I never got.
You
I
wanted
never,
the
I
hang
never
on.
got between.
Rabbi Schmuley, you wanted the source from Candace. I think she's.
you will
I
not
think
let
she
me
has
speak.
one. Well, why don't you let her answer? I think she has one.
Let me fact check this source as well. So 70,000
Yes, I want to see where Israel
Let
dropped
her
more
answer,
bombs
please.
on Gaza than Dresden. Go
70,000
ahead.
tons of explosive have been dropped on the Gaza Strip. Let's see
And
how many
Dresden?
tons of explosives were dropped on Dresden. 1 second.
You mean she said it and now she's fact checking it? You're kidding me, right?
Well, you're
You mean
asking
she
me to
said
give
a
you the direct
definitive
source
statement,
live, and I'm
now
going
she
to
is-
look it up for you.
I
So give me
don't
1
have, I
second.
don't have a computer on me. I
You
don't have a
think-
computer on me. This is ridiculous.
Let her finish.
This is a cheat
and
sheet.
answer
This
the
is
question.
absurd.
Let her
is
answer.
if our sources are correct, does it matter if she's getting it online? If the sources back what she said, why is it outrageous for her to be getting the sources for you? You wanted the sources, and she's looking it up and trying to share with you live, right? I think you should be excited about that, not saying, oh, it's a cheat. It's not an exam.
Question.
Go ahead.
Candace.
So 2,700 tons of bombs were dropped on Dresden in an 800 bomber air raid. And that is according to Britannica, the encyclopedia.
And what
as
was
a
the
source.
tonnage of bombs dropped in Gaza?
In Gaza,
70,000.
it was 70,000 tons of explosives were dropped in the Gaza Strip. And I got that from CNN.
Through the duration of the war to date?
Okay.
Is that the time scale?
Yes.
Okay. So Rabbi Shmuley,
Which
that would
they're
seem to
saying
be
has surpassed
So
the
let's be clear.
Dresden,
So over
Hamburg, and
11
London during
months,
World
she's
War II.
comparing an 11-month war to a single night in Dresden. That's clearly absurd. I'm glad that she has her cheat sheet, her computer in front of her. But notice, she made this
Well, you called it a
statement
blood libel.
not knowing what she was talking
what
about.
she
Just a
said.
moment, please.
Hang
Please don't interrupt
on.
me.
Hang on. What she said, to be clear, was that the Israeli...
It's also in the New York Times.
The Israeli Defense Force had dropped more bombs on Gaza than were dropped on Dresden. That is true. Do you accept that, Rabbi Schmuley?
You know, Piers. I find this an astonishing debate.
You asked.
Wait. First of all, I don't. Wait. What do you mean it's true? Because she said it's true?
No. It's not because she said it's true. The sources say so. The sources say so.
Do you accept that's true?
The New York Times says it's true.
Is this a serious show? Wait. Every time I try to speak,
you asked for a source. You called it a blood libel. You asked for a source. Fortunately, we had time to look it up.
Excuse me, you are interrupting me. She made a definitive statement. She admitted she had no source. She had to then use her computer. It's absurd that she has a computer during this debate.
But she was
right
because she had to look it up. 1 second.
But now
she's saying that over.
This guy is clearly unhinged. Really unhinged.
An 11-month war. No, we don't know that she's right.
How do you come off in a conversation looking worse than Candace Owens of all people?
Because your fact checkers haven't checked it, and my fact checkers haven't checked it. But let's just go back for a moment. Israel was attacked in the most savage way, and women were gang raped, their breasts were cut off. Candace recently had a guest on who even denies that women were raped. Now she's saying it's in the New York Times. She said the other day that the New York Times lied and fabricated about the mass rape of women. She had the former press secretary of Bernie Sanders who denies that. Now she suddenly likes the New York Times. You are speaking to the #1 critic of the New York Times in America. And by the way, this is a typical thing. Candace will say there's no racism in America. Then she will sue, which she did, the Stanford, Connecticut Board of Education for a $40,000 settlement against racism. She then went on a show and fabricated and said, "Oh,
didn't that lawsuit happen when Candace Owens was still left-leaning?" And for the fact that someone says that racism is not a problem in America doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it is zero, right? Now, Candace Owens is, in my opinion, not a very good person. But this is not an argument against her. All those things happened before our current iteration. Probably if it happened now, she wouldn't be so inclined to sue them for racism.
It wasn't a settlement. It was actually for tutors for 1 month. You tell me which tutors are paid $40,000 per month. She will say that I have no right to bring up her family. First of all, I didn't. It was her own father-in-law who condemned her. But she can bring up Brigitte Macron. She can bring up Emmanuel. She can destroy their marriage. Obsess, and you were very good on that, Piers.
Totally irrelevant to this conversation.
Challenging her.
And then trying to emotionally manipulate Piers again. This guy.
He can destroy other people's marriages. And you know what's also interesting?
But hang on.
Wait.
Don't just keep talking.
One final point. The day after October 7th, she said nothing for a few days, never condemned it.
Yeah.
And when you asked her on the show, she said, "Piers, I never talk about anything international." Is Brigitte Macron an American?
But
so she can speak about the genitals of the first.
I think this is probably the place where Rabbi Schmuley got Candace Owens, because I have heard Candace Owens say that she doesn't talk about things international, or she just talks about, she wants to focus on the things that pertains to the US, which is bullshit, which is crap, right? Because she does talk about other things. She was obsessed with Brigitte Macron, right? I never understood her obsession with that woman. Yeah, so her claim that she doesn't talk about intentional things is cap. Bullshit. She does.
Lady of France for months, but not condemned the gang rape of Jewish women?
I've already said to Candace, I don't believe a word of the Brigitte Macron thing. What I would say about what you've just quoted Lord Farmer as saying, you said that he condemned Candace in the statement he put on X. He didn't condemn her. I've just read it again, and there's no condemnation of his daughter-in-law. He simply set
You're
out...
kidding. Read the first line.
In view of public comments from a high-profile member of my family, I want to put my own views.
If your resume isn't getting traction, it might be time to change up your strategy and see what the data...
On anti-Semitism
he wants to put out his own views, right? Because his views might not overlap, might not correspond to what his daughter-in-law was saying, right? That wasn't the condemnation. That was saying that she's entitled to her opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. This is my opinion on this issue. So it wasn't a condemnation.
Current military campaign in Gaza on public record. Where's the condemnation?
Thank you very much.
Candace?
Thank you. So
where's the condemnation?
Thank you. So let's get the timeline. Candace says she was on vacation
Where did he condemn
with her father-in-law 2 days before. Wait,
where did he condemn her?
You and I can read between the lines on any press
I'm
statement.
not reading between the
Number
lines.
one, she says, in
you
view
said
of
he condemned
a
her.
high profile.
I've just shown you he didn't condemn her.
He absolutely condemned her.
No, he didn't.
He doesn't once say it's my daughter-in-law Candace, and I love her, but we disagree. Number two, he went on to say that Israel has every right. He was distancing himself for her repulsive future
he gave his own opinion.
Anti-Semitism.
He gave his own opinion.
Why did he start by saying, in light of a high-profile
member of my family? He gave his own opinion. He didn't condemn her. I didn't even name her.
He distanced himself from Candace Owens.
Let me ask Candace a different question, which is this. Candace, why is it, do you think, that so many people in the Jewish community believe that you are anti-Semitic?
I think that's actually a very good question. And just to go back, I'm going to answer your question. I just want to make sure people are recognizing, because he said a lot of stuff there. He's not able to counter. He essentially tried to hold me to looking up the sources. We've now found the sources, and it's the BBC, it's the New York Times, and it is the Euromed Human Rights Monitor.
We have found no sources, and we'll fact check it afterward. You looked it up during the show. I'm sorry.
Bombs were dropped on Gaza. And per the BBC, the British aircraft dropped 4,000 tons of bombs on Dresden. So just for clarity,
in a single night, not 11 months, in a single night, correct.
Please don't cut me off. I have not cut you off. He called that a blood libel because that is a strategy, which is meant to just distract people from the truth or looking into it. So you say everything you say is a blood libel. Now, to answer your question, Piers, I think that's a very good question. And the answer for that is because the media as an entity has been basically mining Jewish pain, the history of their pain, by taking people out of context and presenting things that are as a fact that is simply untrue, things that I've never said. We are watching right now, and that's why I'm grateful for you to provide this opportunity. You are watching Rabbi Schmuley do this live, right? When we talk about yellow journalism.
And, I hate to agree with Candace Owens, but she's right. The media loves to mine people's misery and people's pain and produces as something to be outraged, whether it's with Black people mining the history of oppression and racism in America, whether it's with Muslim people or Arabs mining quote unquote Islamophobia, and now with Jewish people mining anti-Semitism, right? You can't say anything about Jewish people or about Israel and not be accused of being an anti-Semite. Before, you can't say anything about Muslims without being called an Islamophobe, or even some things about Black people without being called racist. That's the game that's being played, right? So every group, or some groups or most groups, mine their pain to just cause division.
And people that take things out of context and try to present it to people with a bunch of hysteria and go, oh my gosh, Candace said this. Oh my gosh, Candace is a Holocaust denier. Oh my gosh, he's called me all of these names, and he doesn't have a single fact in there. They just know that if they say those things, it's a trigger. It is reminiscent of exactly what was done for Black Americans for a very long time. They have now since changed their perspective on me, but for a long time, they thought that I legitimately hated being Black and hated the color of my skin.
Since when did they change their perspective of you, Candace? I don't think they did. You went one time to the Breakfast Club and you were laughed at by other Black people. So, nah.
And because I stood against Black Lives Matter as an organization, and I stood against what Black Lives Matter was doing. And the media made them hysterical. She's a Black person who doesn't even want to be Black, and she's a Black white supremacist. They bought that narrative because when the media lies, a lot of people accept that what they're reading is true. But
it wasn't really a narrative. You gave them reasons to suspect that much.
Of course, I didn't hate Black Americans. I didn't hate anything other than BLM abusing and mining Black pain, going back and saying, well, it's going to be just like slavery, to distract people from what was ultimately just a fraudulent organization that was actually going to bring more harms to Black Americans in the end. And that's how I feel about the state of Israel and everything they're doing. Ultimately, I believe it's going to yield more anti-Semitism. It's going to make people associate what Bibi Netanyahu is doing to all Jews around the world. And so I think it's important for them to realize it's these same exact tactics of manipulation, the same exact name calling and ad hominem attacks that is not.
Yeah, she has a point, but anybody who is going to associate what Israel is doing currently now with Jews all over the world is probably an anti-Semite to begin with, because this is not Jews. This is Israel. This is a country. There are Jews all over the world. There are Jews in Britain. There are Jews in America. There are Jews in many parts of the world. There are Jews in Argentina, in Chile, what have you, right? So what have they to do with what's happening in Israel, right? I know Jewish people all over the world have strong ties to the land of Israel, but if you are associating what's happening, what Israel is doing currently with Jews that are not Israelis, then you're probably an anti-Semite.
Based in fact and not based in reality, but based in not wanting to answer the fair critiques that people have about what Israel is doing. But that's a very good question.
Okay, Rabbi Schmuley, I mean, there's some validity to that argument, I think, is that too often I do see people immediately branded anti-Semitic if they dare to criticize the Israeli government. But there's a very big difference between criticizing a government and its actions and a whole people, which is what anti-Semitism is. And do you accept that difference?
The beauty of Israel is its democracy. You just said that hundreds of thousands of people are marching against Benjamin Netanyahu. I welcome those protests. It shows that even during war, listen, in 1864, the United States had a presidential election. Some people wanted to cancel it, saying that how could you elect Lincoln when there's a civil war? And they still had the election. Israel's the same. Let's just go through Candace Owens' history of anti-Semitism.
Well, hang on.
That is utterly unconnected.
I will let you do that. I will let you do that, and she can respond. But on my specific point, though, do you accept that it's perfectly possible, and indeed it should be in a robust democratic society, a central tenet of this, that Israel's government and its prime minister should be criticized by anyone who chooses to criticize them, without the people who criticize them being branded anti-Semitic?
Of course. I am a very close friend of Netanyahu, and I criticize him allowing Qatar is one of the most duplicitous
birds of a feather, they say.
Governments in the world. They house all of the leaders, the billionaire leaders of Hamas. I criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, my dear friend, for allowing money to go into Hamas in the belief.
This boss is so easy. Let's get him, guys. No more losing. No more excuses.
That they could be bought off of. I criticize the Israeli government for not recognizing the Armenian genocide, something that Candace Owens blames the Jews. She actually says that Kemal Ataturk was led by the Jews to the Armenian genocide. By the way, the Armenian genocide took place under the Ottoman Turks, not Kemal Ataturk. She has no sense of history, and she just fabricates constantly. But let's just look for one moment.
Okay, on the specific
wait, one second. But let's just go through her history of anti-Semitism, please.
Yes, you said you had specifics of Candace Owens being
I will. Yes,
anti-Semitic. What are those examples?
Okay. You see, the Jewish community did not want Candace Owens to be anti-Semitic. This is actually a trend.
They did not want her. What has their want got to do with anything? I don't understand. Are they the ones that determine whether she's anti-Semitic or not? It's based on her behavior. So whether or not they want her to be anti-Semitic, if she's anti-Semitic, she's anti-Semitic. If she's not, despite their wishes, despite what they want, she's not.
Tragedy that a woman gifted by God with such eloquence has decided to become a purveyor of hate. And when she said in 2018 that she has no issue with Hitler because if he was a nationalist, but then he wanted to go beyond her borders. Even then, we didn't call her an anti-Semite. That's an absurd thing to say, that you had no issue with Hitler. Hitler, even domestically by then, had enacted all the Nuremberg laws. There was already the November 9th, 1938 pogrom.
Hang on.
Well, to be fair to Candace Owens, I've reviewed that video, and I think she was wrong in what she said. She didn't say she had no issues with Hitler. She said she didn't have any issues with nationalism, right? She said if Hitler just wanted to nationalize, if Hitler just wanted Germany to be great but did not have ambitions outside of Germany, she would have no issues with that. Candace Owens ran into that. That was a very ignorant thing to say, because even if Hitler had just had ambitions within Germany, he wanted Germany to be for a specific group of people. He was still going to murder Jews. He was still going to murder gypsies. He was still going to murder black people and gays and all those other people. He wasn't going to create a state for everybody that is within the German territory. It was an exclusive state for people that he considered to be German or Aryan. So yeah, his nationalism was fucked up as well.
Just to clarify, let's take these one at a time. What do you believe she said about Adolf Hitler in the clip you're talking about.
She said that there was no issue with Hitler except for the fact that he went beyond his borders. If he was a nationalist,
let's play
that
the
would
clip.
have been enough.
Let me play the clip.
It's domestic.
Let
No,
me play the clip.
but my point is, no one called her. My
in
point
the
is,
interest of fairness, I'm going to play the clip so that viewers who've never heard it can hear what actually got said.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize.
That was not the problem with Hitler. His problem was not that he wanted to globalize. He didn't want everyone to speak German as you would claim.
Everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German.
He didn't want everybody to be German. He didn't want everybody to speak German. He wanted to create more room for the German people. He wanted to create a Lebensraum, as you will call it. He wanted to create more room in the East for German expansion, right? And he had typical features of those people that he wanted to inherit this place. So yeah, she's talking out of her ass.
To look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. So in thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I don't have anything problem. I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid.
So, Candace, on that specific point, would you say that Rabbi Schmuley has categorized it correctly or not?
He's just openly lying, and that's why he didn't want you to play the clip. I was in the UK, by the way. I was at the Royal Mobile Club. There were Jewish journalists in the room, and nothing was written about it until months later when somebody was working on a hit piece about me. I was answering a question when they were saying, how can we just embrace the word nationalism when it sort of has this dirty feel? And I was just essentially saying that I actually don't have an issue with nationalism. I think it's totally fine to be a British nationalist, to be an American nationalist. And the problem is that it's wrongly attributed. That word, I think people instantly associate it with Adolf Hitler. And I would argue that he wasn't actually a nationalist because obviously he invaded Poland and he went beyond German borders. I didn't even mention Jewish.
I think Candace Owens has a very naive understanding of what nationalism means, right? Nationalism is not you not invade. In fact, most nationalists would want to invade other countries to, quote unquote, keep their country safe, to keep their people safe. It is usually an exclusionary movement, right? A movement that excludes or essentializes one group within the same geographical territory, right? And excludes other people. The Jews who were in Germany at that time were Germans. They were German citizens. But Hitler did not want a Germany for Jews. He didn't want a Germany for, quote unquote, communists. He didn't want a Germany for other people. He didn't want a Germany for gypsies. He didn't want a Germany for gay people. He didn't want a Germany for black people. That was Hitler's brand of nationalism. It was exclusionary. All nationalism, all nationalist movements are exclusionary. You don't see a nationalist movement that welds different types of people together and say, oh, we are forming a national identity. We are forming a country. No. So she has a very naive and fundamental misunderstanding of what nationalism is.
People, I didn't mention the Holocaust, and suddenly you have people like Rabbi Schmuley who are pretending that I got up there and I defended Adolf Hitler. It's just, this isn't
that
good
is not
business.
What she said.
And
we
this is why I
we
say
just watched
right
the clip.
now, please don't cut me off. Please do not cut me off. A huge issue that you have right now is this dishonesty. If you really want to understand why Israel is facing a PR crisis, why Zionism right now to people doesn't feel good and they don't want to associate themselves with it, is because it seems like it takes so many lies to maintain. There's no reason to misrepresent what I said and to tell people that I support Adolf Hitler, other than the fact that you want people to hate me. And so
I think this point that she made is very, very important in understanding why people are being turned off by Israel right now. I mean, for all of my life, I have been pro-Israel. I should naturally be pro-Israel, but the lies, oh God, the damn lies. The lies just put me off. They just turned me off. Israel has a lot of legitimate grievances. They have a lot of legitimate position that they don't even need to lie to get the sympathy of the world, but the lies.
I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that you guys have that clip ready to go.
Well, you may respond to what you just said and to that clip. Now you've watched it.
Okay. I never said you shouldn't play the clip. I'm actually happy you did. She said if Hitler had only focused on domestic policy, she would have had no issue with him. His domestic policy was to the Kristallnacht, burn down 3,000 synagogues in a single night domestically. That was not in Poland. That was not in Czechoslovakia. His domestic policy was the 1934 Nuremberg laws. His domestic policy was a complete dictatorship where he destroyed the Bundestag and subjected and created Dachau under Himmler. So those are the historical facts. Now but what I said was, even then, the Jewish community gave her a pass. She explained it. One mistake, people make mistakes. Here's her history of anti-Semitism. She's not going to be barred from going into Australia because of anything she said about Israel. That is a fabrication. She's going to be barred. Australia is my wife's country, born in Sydney. She's going to be barred to go to Australia because she's a Holocaust denier, because a 100-year-old victim of Josef Mengele, the angel of death's experiments, came forward and said, "You are going to traumatize me all over again." She actually said that Mengele's experiments, the fourth worst person in Nazi Germany after Hitler,
we tend to think that our spirit is in our body. That's actually not correct. Your body is in your spirit.
Goebbels, Mengele, it was a fabrication. She's an out-and-out Holocaust denier. And Australia, God bless them, took in so many survivors after the war, including my wife's family from Slovakia.
Well, let me ask Candace Owens now.
Let me ask her now. She said that the Mengele experiments were false. Go ahead.
Let me ask Candace Owens now two things. One, are you a Holocaust denier, or do you accept that 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis in the Holocaust? And secondly, do you believe that Joseph Mengele did what he is reported to have done and has been since World War II ended?
Thank you for those questions. No, absolutely. I am not a Holocaust denier. This is, again, another fabrication based off of a monologue that I did in which I was putting pressure on the American government to explain why it is a fact that we learned all of these things about the horrific things that Nazi scientists did. And to be clear, Piers, I did not even mention Joseph Mengele's name in this skit at all. I spoke about all of the things that we learned, that we were told over the years, some of which ended up being rebutted. And, there were tons of, that part doesn't matter. The point is, the end conclusion of that is that the CIA, via an operation known as Operation Paperclip, took the Nazi scientists and brought them to America, where they continued horrific experiments on Americans.
Didn't the Nazis get some of their racial, some of their racial eugenics ideas or inspiration from America? I remember to have read something like that.
That's the full context of that. So they pulled out a statement, one sentence where I said, we've heard all of these sorts of things that they've done, cut people in half, sewed them back together. And I said, that sounds like a ridiculous waste of time. And when you pull that clip up by itself, it sounds like I'm just diminishing all of these stories, when in reality, I'm saying, let's take everything at face value. Let's say everything we've ever heard was true. Why on earth would the American government acquiesce to bringing these scientists over to America? And as a fact, Dr. Mengele was not one of the scientists which was brought over to America. So
but just to be clear, you accept, hang on, I'll come to you, Rabbi Schmuley. To be clear, you accept the Nazis murdered 6 million Jews in the Holocaust?
Yeah, I have never once in any of my appearances
I'm just asking you to clarify.
Denied the Holocaust atrocities.
Okay.
Ever.
And you accept that Joseph Mengele was a despicable man who perpetrated horrendous crimes, including experimenting on Jewish people when they were still alive.
All of the scientists, the Nazi experiments that were done were horrific. And that's why I was saying they were so horrific that it makes you go, why on earth would the American government in this clandestine operation bring over the Nazi scientists who then became a part of our CIA and continued experiments onto America through to the 60s and the 70s. And I was quoting what those experiments were that was done throughout the Korean War.
Rabbi Schmuley, your response.
And I read it.
After this debate, we will post every single clip. That was a complete and utter fabrication. What she said was that she doubts that any of this happened because it was, as she just said, a waste of time. The whole Holocaust was a waste of time. Hitler had no winter equipment for his soldiers in Stalingrad under General Paulus in 1942 because the boxcars were taking Jews to Auschwitz. You see, that is what hatred is, Candace. It's where you hate so much that it becomes self-destructive. It's what's happening to you. You're a very gifted, eloquent broadcaster. You are self-destructing before America's eyes because you have some issue with the Jews, not with Israel. So let me continue. You actually said that Theodor Herzl was a Frankist. By the way, when you attack Frankists as a bunch of Jewish pedophiles, you forget to mention they all became part of your religion. They all converted in 1757 to Catholicism. You always omit that. But you said that Theodor Herzl was a Frankist, and you said he set up the state of Israel as a refuge for pedophiles. This is before Gaza. This is before Rafah, as a refuge for Jewish pedophiles. You always refer to Jews as pedophiles. It's the main word you use about Jews. And every historian knows that what began in Norwich in 1099 with the first blood libel, where the Jews were falsely accused of taking a Christian child and drinking his blood, you actually believe that. You said that Christian bodies, this is before Rafah, this is before Israel, that Christian bodies were found all over Europe. And when you speak about pedophilia, you know, it's funny, you just converted to Catholicism. In 2002, Pope John Paul II, a pope that you would probably like, he was very conservative. He was a great man, great friend of the Jewish community, recognized the state of Israel, sent an ambassador in 1994. He apologized, very frail, to the world Catholic community, saying that at least 2% of all Catholic priests were pedophiles. Later, Pope Benedict XVI apologized again. I met Pope Benedict, a great man, great friend of the Jewish community. He said it was 4%. Then Pope Francis raised it probably even higher, 6%. We know 1 million people, almost 1 million people, children in France alone, according to the French government, were abused by Catholic priests. But you've never once condemned Catholic pedophilia. Everyone knows it was the biggest scandal in the world, but only the Jews are pedophiles. Is that anti-Semitism?
Okay, let me ask Candace, do you condemn pedophiles in the Catholic Church?
I do. Everywhere they are. And yeah, see, you know, it might seem as if people are singling out the Israelis or Jews right now, but given what is happening, you can understand why the focus is on Israel. During the height of the scandal on pedophilia in the Catholic Church, that was what people were talking about. Nobody was talking about Jewish pedophiles. We were talking about Catholic pedophiles. We were talking about priests who were pedophiles. So it is situationally specific. These accusations are coming up right now because of the current conflict, the current situation that we find ourselves. It doesn't mean no one has ever talked about pedophilia in the Catholic Church. I mean, if you want to think what is the most prominent theme of pedophilia, you want to think Catholic Church. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. How these priests have been abusing young boys, right? That's what comes to your mind. So I don't know. Well, I don't know why he thinks this is some sort of attack on Jews. Maybe it is by Candace, but this is not novel.
Christian pedophiles.
Yeah, he's just lying again. Actually, on my show, I spoke extensively about Frankism, and I told people that there was a conversion into the Catholic faith. And one of the things that I believe is that all of the Abrahamic religions have been infiltrated by Satanists, and that is what I've said. So they've decided to pull apart only the piece where I'm talking about Judaism and not where I'm speaking about all of the faiths having been infiltrated and speaking about how it's important for everyone to recognize.
Rabbi Schmuley, is he checking his notes or what?
This so that you can realize that there is this sort of satanic cult that's operating within all of the faiths. And I think that they use Christians and they use Jews and Muslims as well. I've said that on my show multiple times. So he's just absolutely lying about that. I think the difference here is that you'd be hard pressed to find a Catholic that would in any capacity defend pedophilia. Now, regarding what he is saying that I said Judaism is filled with pedophiles, that is objectively a nonsense. I am a Christian. I'm aware of what the first 5 books of my Bible are. That would be me insinuating that, okay, well, the first 5 books of my Bible are inspired by pedophilia. That's absolutely false. What I said, and I'm hopeful that this is something that the rabbi will agree with, is that it is a fact that Jewish pedophiles, American Jewish pedophiles, escape and run and hide in Israel, where they are given safe harbor by the government.
I've seen something on that to suspect that there's some measure of truth to that. I've seen some videos, I've read some articles that suspect that that might actually be true.
That is a fact. They will not extradite our pedophiles. That is an absolute nonsense, given the many billions of dollars that we give to Israel, that we can't get back the men that are raping children, okay? And
talk about raping children, right? I mean, Israel kills American citizens and nothing happens. the journalist, the American journalist that was killed in Gaza a few days ago. Not US hasn't said anything about it. So what are you talking about? It's Israel. They're not going to say anything about it.
I can't imagine a single person that would think otherwise, that is not a nonsense and that we should not be giving back those pedophiles. And to be clear, it wasn't Candace Owens who researched and came up with this. It was an incredible Jewish organization that looked into this, talked about how wrong it was, and brought it into the mainstream media. If you don't like that Israel is harboring pedophiles, that's not on me. That is on the state of Israel. Okay, again, I am condemning the state of Israel for harboring American pedophiles and not extraditing them. Do you have a disagreement there, Rabbi? If so, please share.
Thank you, Candace.
She's sounding like a prosecutor.
Not only is that an absolute lie and fabrication against Israel, the most famous example, the country that will now bar you from entering because you're a Holocaust denier, not because of Israel, because a 100-year-old experimentee of Mengele came forward and said, do not subject me to this trauma. And the Interior Minister of Australia said, wait, what's it?
But I don't understand.
Well, she just said it.
No.
But I don't understand the man's objection to Candace Owens coming to Australia, right? If Candace Owens is going to Australia, is he going to go to the man's house? Is she going to go to his home for him to be traumatized all over again by some random person that he doesn't know? Seems weird.
She denies Mengele's experiments,
and that's not when they've literally just said 6 million Jews got killed in the Holocaust.
Wait.
That's not Holocaust
wait
denial.
A second. Come on, Piers. You're more subtle than that.
It's not about being subtle.
Say that 6 million Jews died. You can say
she believes.
Of course, you could be a Holocaust denier. Why don't you let me answer, please? You could say that 6 million Jews were accidentally bombed by Curtis LeMay and by Bomber Harris, and there was no Zyklon B. She said that Mengele did not do those experiments. By the way, this is not my decision. This is the government of Australia that is barring her. Please don't interrupt me, Candace. The most famous.
This dude likes to appeal to authority. Oh man,
the foremost anti-Semite.
Join the excitement with Betano, the premier sports betting platform in
Europe. And when you speak about pedophilia, it's funny, you just converted to Catholicism. We all know that the Vatican, of course, took cardinals, like the Cardinal Archbishop of Boston, and gave them the highest positions in the Vatican. She has never criticized that. Only Israel. She's now, Candace, let me ask you a point-blank question. Did you say that
this whataboutism is really, really strange, right? Okay, let's say Candace Owens has only criticized Israel for pedophilia and hasn't criticized the Catholic Church for pedophilia. Does that make her critique wrong? I'm really more interested in what's the truth of what she's saying, not compared to some other thing that you think she's supposed to be criticizing. Is she right or is she wrong? That's what I'm interested in. People choose what they want to critique. People choose the sort of fights they want to have. People choose the sort of things they want to care about. But in that thing that they care about, are they right or are they wrong? That's what I'm most interested in.
Theodor Herzl, you said he was a Frankist or descended from Frankists. Again, Frankists all became Catholic. He was Jewish. Did you say that Theodor Herzl set up Israel as a haven for Jewish pedophiles?
Okay. First and foremost, I just want to debunk your claim that what I said was a lie. It is in CBS News, and it was the Jewish Community Watch, an American organization that tracks accused pedophiles, who has been trying for years to find a specific.
So far, Candace Owens has at least produced 2 sources for her claims. Rabbi Schmuley has produced an total amount of 0.
Pedophile. Wow. They are the ones that brought this to the forefront, and CBS News partnered with them.
What's the name of the pedophile? What's the name of that pedophile? I just gave you a name, Malka Laufer. What's the name of that pedophile?
Well, they were tracking down a pedophile named.
This is Gish Gallop. He's just throwing as much information out there to try to throw her off. She did not mention a specific pedophile. She said that the Jewish state, or she said that Israel is giving, is hosting pedophiles, is shielding them. They're not being extradited back to the US. She didn't mention a specific, but he's going to harp on that and say, oh, what's the name of the pedophile? What's the name of the pedophile? What's the name of the pedophile?
Now let's go to the Vatican.
Carell.
How many people they allowed? How many cardinal
You can't cut
archbishops
me
were
off.
protected?
Please don't cut me off.
So
Please don't
is
cut.
he having a contest with the Vatican on who can be more of a pedophile? Is this like a contest? Okay, let's say the Vatican wins and Israel comes a close second. Does that make Israel any better? Weird.
Cut me off.
Okay.
You told a lie, and so I'm debunking it live for you. The pedophile
What's
they were
the
tracking
name
down
of the
was
pedophile they're
Jimmy-
looking for? What's the name?
I'm trying to say it for the third time. His name is Jimmy Julius Carell.
You're looking it
The
up right
title of the
now?
article
You mean you
in
said all this and you had no idea?
The title of the article in CBS News is entitled How Jewish American Pedophiles Hide from Justice in Israel. CBS News teamed up with a Jewish organization and came to this conclusion because they were the ones that brought it to the forefront. So courageous Jewish people who are
Do we
calling
really
this out
need
as something
someone
that
to
is
read
wrong.
off the internet
Jewish
in a
Community
debate?
Watch
This is not
the
your
name
show.
of
This
the
is a debate.
organization.
Okay.
I am
Did you
debunking
say that?
I don't understand this guy. He doesn't like proof. He doesn't like proofs. This is not your show. He asks for proof, and when she gets the proof, he gets mad that he's giving proof. Weird.
Theodore Herzl created the state of.
I
Piers,
think we are getting,
did she
if you
say
don't
that
mind me
Theodore
saying,
Herzl
I think
set
we're
up
getting,
Israel?
we are getting too obsessionally sidetracked into pedophilia. When
No,
this
no, no,
debate,
no. This is one critical thing.
no,
Did
this
she say
debate-
that
I want
Theodore
this
Herzl
debate-
set up Israel
I want
as a
this
haven for
debate-
pedophiles?
I want to end. We've got to end the debate, and I want to end the debate by giving you both this opportunity. Right? You are both religious people. Right? Every religion purports to be peace-loving. Right? Religions are supposed to spread peace and harmony and love and respect and kindness. Whether you're a Catholic, as I am, as Candace is, whether you're a Jew, as you are, Rabbi Schmuley. So I'm going to ask you both, and I'll start with you, Candace, to say something nice about Rabbi Schmuley. Be a Christian. What would you say?
Yeah, I actually deeply appreciate Rabbi Schmuley having a platform. It's not something that I've ever said I want his platform stripped away, because I think that he does more in terms of revealing what it is that I'm speaking about when I'm talking about radicalism than anybody else. And so in that way, I'm grateful that he has a platform, and I would never call for him to be banned from anywhere. I hope he gets a megaphone, and I think
And
that
as a
people
human being,
watching his behavior today.
Do you see any saving grace as
That's totally not a compliment, Candace. Come on.
a human being?
I think I will pray for him. I will pray for his.
That was like when similar question was asked to Hillary Clinton during the debate with Trump, and she said, "Oh, what I like about Trump are his children." Come on. The question was, what do you like about this person? Say something positive about this person, and you rant off about something that's related to them that's not directly them. So, Candace, be better.
Conversion into Christianity. I don't think it's normal to lie like that and feel nothing, but he continues to do it. He's filing FBI reports against
I don't think it's normal to lie like that too.
me over pizza. I don't have any hatred in my heart towards Rabbi Schmuley. I really don't. Like I've said, I hope he forever has a platform, because I think that it showcases to the world what it is that I'm speaking about when we speak about radical Zionism.
Okay, Rabbi Schmuley, do you want to say something nice about Candace Owens?
Absolutely. She is gifted by God with incredible eloquence. I think she can repent and cease being a force for hatred against the Black community who call her Candace, who have rejected her utterly. She is one of the most despised women in America by the Black community. She is doing a whole new tour to be reaccepted. I think she can use her eloquence to apologize. Instead, she essentially hinted that the only reason she attacked the Black community for the past 4 years, calling them stupid and dumb and can't vote for themselves and cry wolf and racism, was because she was forced to do so at the Daily Wire. I call it the Daily Liar. Maybe that's correct, but I think she should take personal responsibility. Saying that Israel was created as a haven for Jewish pedophiles by Theodore Herzl is not the way she's going to repent. Saying that she defends Kanye West when he says he loves Hitler. Hitler killed 10,000 Jews a day, 3 9/11s a day for 4 years.
Okay.
Between 1941 and 1945.
I think we know the greatest.
Wait 1 second, please.
No,
Piers.
I know the
And
greatest hits
one
are
second,
coming.
please.
It's fine. We've heard them.
But
All
you
I
know,
wanted
you
you to
wanted
do
to
was
speak.
say something
and you
nice.
said, I
didn't want to hear the
think she
Rabbi
could use
Schmuley
her.
greatest hits of how awful
I think
Candace
she could
Owens is.
use.
That's how he started
I
this.
think she could use her eloquence to repent. That's all.
Okay.
And I think finally, that if Candace could just come forward and admit that as a Christian, Jesus said clearly that You cannot approach him
Dude, stop quoting Jesus. You don't believe in him, please. Come on.
through the Jews. He said that the Jews are the root and Christians are the branch. The fact that we in the community consider her the #1 anti-Semite in America.
So let me tell you. Yes, the Jews were the people that God revealed himself to. But you know what the Bible also said? It said that, branches are going to be grafted into the tree, right? Those that are not fruitful will be cut off, right? There was a parable where Jesus Christ said that there was a party, I think there was a wedding feast, and then they went to call people, the people in the compound, the people in the house that were supposed to be a part of those party, and they rejected it and said, you know what? Go out to the streets, go and call the strangers, go and call other people. So if you have rejected the Messiah, if you have rejected the message of Christ, don't think that you are still the branch, right? It's those who have accepted it. From a Christian perspective, Jews don't accept Jesus Christ. So
it means that she cannot relate to Jesus. So I'm saying become a Christian. That's a very nice thing to say. The fact that Jesus said, I'm sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Come and learn about the Jewish Jesus. You know what, Candace? I'll give you a free copy of my book, Kosher Jesus. It teaches.
Yeah, because he wanted the Jews to be saved. That's why he focused his ministry on them. But then after his death, he gave the mandate that his disciples, his apostles, should go out there and preach to all parts of the world. Saying that every part of the world would be, that the gospel of the kingdom was preached in all the ends of the earth before the end will come. So it wasn't restricted to the Jews, but God Almighty gave them that primacy to learn first, to accept Jesus Christ first, of which many of them, including Rabbi Schmuley, do not.
This is about the Jewish Jesus. The meek shall inherit the earth. Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek. Don't say, and stop calling me a killer. Stop saying I'm trying to kill you.
Would you also quote where the Bible says that I'm the way, the truth, and the light? No one comes to the Father but by me. Why are you picking Bible verses to quote?
Said it over and over again. You are saying what Henry II said. Rid me of this troublesome priest.
Shmuley, I think we've established you're struggling to find anything nice to say about Candace, but I appreciate you both coming on together for this debate. I think it's been very illuminating, and thank you for doing it. Thank you for being uncensored.
Yeah, so that was the conversation between Candace Owens and Rabbi Schmuley, right? Being hosted by Piers Morgan. I think Piers did a good job of moderating the debate. He did not interject as much as he's wanting to do in many of his other conversations where he just shouts and talks over his guests. But I think Candace, the thing I'll give to Candace in this conversation is that she was calm, she was composed, she came with her facts, she was able to hold her positions. I know that Rabbi Schmuley did have some good points. He did have some good points, but overall, I think that he is actually unhinged. The fact that this guy is a rabbi, I don't know how they select rabbis, or I don't know how he became a rabbi in the first place. If this guy is the representation of Judaism, he's not giving a very good image of Judaism. I don't think so. So that's the conversation. I'll just take some comments from the comment section before we end the show. Luke Bovine is here, said that she got cancelled on YouTube. Yeah, Candace Owens, she was demonetized on YouTube, just as I have been demonetized on YouTube. So they were facing the same thing. But it's crazy. I don't think that people should be demonetized for their views. I think, I'm struggling to see where Candace Owens, where she violated YouTube's rules. But these things can be very, very, they can be very whimsical, right? The rules are not applied equally. You can get your channel demonetized, but we got to do what we're going to do, right? I don't think people should be cancelled for their views, right? Luke Bovine said that Hitler started with communists, he murdered them, and then moved on to Jews, saying that they were associated. Yeah, he definitely did that. And he associated Judaism with communism. In his book, Mein Kampf, he had already outlined all the terrible things he was going to do. So the point that Candace Owens was making about nationalism, just if Hitler wanted to just be within Germany, Hitler wanted Germany to be great. Hitler wanted to expand the frontiers of Germany. That was why he was annexing territory. Every territory he annexed became part of Germany. So That was nationalism, but that's that kind of nationalism, or nationalism is always exclusionary, and it has to do with an exclusion of a group that already lives within the particular geography, right? Luke Baba says Nazi science is more twisted. Yeah, it is. I don't think there's evidence said this. I don't know what that is a reference to. Yeah, we talked about the Japanese. The Japanese were absolute beasts in World War II too, with all the crazy things that they did. The Japanese were so terrible that even Nazi officers in Manchuria at that time that Japan was occupying, they were appalled at the practices, they were appalled at the barbaric practices of the Japanese. You know, these guys looked for ingenious ways for killing people, like who's the fastest to kill this much number of persons. Those guys were really, really bad, right? Luke Bovine says Andrew Tate will probably go there. He probably go to one of these Arab nations as well. I don't think there's any difference. You know, I look at the Middle East. There isn't really any difference between Israel and its neighbors. They're all ethno-nationalist, religious states. They're all almost all the same. There's really not much difference. Say Israel is not a church. States at war should be criticized much more than churches. I think criticism should be anything that deserves criticism, whether it be an individual, the church, states, they should be criticized, and nobody should be given a pass. What the sort of pedophilia in the Catholic Church needs to be called out. What Israel is currently doing in Gaza needs to be called out, because those things are not right. Yeah, so he said this is one of Pierce's best. Actually, this is one of his best. I could barely listen to Piers Morgan's show prior, because it just devolves into a shouting match. And if not for Rabbi Schmuley, who was being the one doing the shouting today, it was very, very, very good conversation. Luke Bovine says Candace's calm tone kept Schmuley calm. Yeah, she was very calm. She was composed. It was not an attack mode. She wasn't doing her typical attack that she normally does. So yes, that is the conversation we have for today. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel, right? You can also support on Patreon, or you can get my crime fiction novel as well as my my poetry book, which I'll put in the link to the description of this video and possibly also in the comment section. So that would be all for this show tonight. I will catch you guys in another live stream. It is bye for now.